It's week one. You've got questions. I might have some sort of answers. Let's talk some football. Welcome to the Chief of the North Mailbag Edition, week one. We're here. Football is here. We can finally stop speculating. We can finally stop predicting. We can finally stop prognosticating. And we can finally start talking football. I'm just kind of happy that I stuck the word prognosticating. So I kind of feel like I should end this live stream right now. But I'm not going to. Well, live stream, recorded stream. You know what I mean. It is Thursday, which means we're going to do our mailbag. You guys sent questions. I hope that I have answers. Let's see what we've got. You guys had a bunch of questions, so I'm going to try to dive right in. A couple of reminders right out of the gate. If you want me to, if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to ask mailbag questions for next week, put them in the comments, not the live stream comments. Those are a little too copious to go through, but the comments following the video, I'll start with those each week. And that's what I'm going to start with this week. Either that, or you can look at my Twitter feed on Wednesdays and I'll put out a question that says, this week it says week one mailbag. And, you can decipher that code and ask the mailbag question there. That's how you can get the questions in here. And you guys have asked so many utilizing those methods that I'm just going to try to dive right into it, get to as many as humanly possible. It's week one. Football is here. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all the things that you're supposed to do with YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to NFL 33, Ryan and Dan's Substack. Make sure to subscribe to the Chief of the North newsletter, my Substack. If you're watching this, there's probably something up on there that you might enjoy with regards to predictions. There's another article on some X Factors. Lots of fun stuff like that. Oh, also Chief of the North swag. Get yourself some, all that fun stuff. But let's just get right into questions because you guys asked a ton, and I already talked too fast trying to get to all of them. So, oh, by the way, I'm going to butcher all of your names. This is basically a tradition. I don't know what to tell you. Lev Mass says, a second question. If we were in some alternate reality where our team was about to play a game and was forced to play with no coaches, which players would you choose to call the game? Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special team. In this scenario, whoever you choose could not suit up. They could only coach. I think that's a really interesting question. I actually had to sit there and ponder it for a little while. The problem with special teams coordinator is because your specialists, the only guys that really do some of that specialist stuff, you need all of them. However, special teams coordinator, I think special teams is something that might be able to run itself for a game just a little bit more. So I wasn't too worried about that one. So I'm going to actually just focus on offensive and defensive coordinator. Now, this I thought would be easy. And then you added that twist that they can't suit up. They can only coach. This would have actually been easier to answer last year because it would have been on defensive coordinator, would have been Anthony Hitchens, and that would have been really, really easy. This year, any of the guys that I would pick just off the top of my head to try to call the game defensively are all guys that feel essentially irreplaceable on the field. And so actually the guy that I would go with in terms of a defensive coordinator would be Frank Clark. Well, Frank Clark, yes. And then I'm trying to combine two things here. He's been in the system multiple years. Coaches rave about his brain, his knowledge of the system, knowing where he's supposed to be, what he's supposed to do. I assume that that's accurate. And the reality of the situation is, in terms of on-field production, I don't know that he would be missed as much as, if Nick Bolton or somewhat, Juan Thornhill, a guy that I think you might really need out there. So that would be my choice. Rashad Fenton might be a choice in there as well, just because he's such a smart player in the secondary. I think he would do a good job with that. On the offensive side of the ball, that's tough because your obvious pick would be Mahomes or Kelsey, but you need either one of them on the field. And so I sat and thought about it for a while, and I think, I could be wrong here, I think I would end up going with one of the offensive linemen that's been in the system for a while, like Reader or something like that, and just hope that, hey, Patrick Mahomes is my quarterback. It's going to be fine. That question took me a long time to think about, and basically I went with damage mitigation on the field. And so I have no idea if that would work or not work. Another question from Lev. Thanks for the questions. Just for fun, I would love to play the game Canton coach, color commentary with some of the young guys. You have to pick one Chiefs player for each category who will make it into Canton, who will be a head coach, who will be in the booth one day. The catch is the player you choose can only be 3 years. What's with all the catches in your questions, Lev? Goodness gracious. And I can't choose Creed for all three. Well, I'm going to choose Creed for one. So I'm going to pick one. And this sounds more like a prognostication. Yeah, that's right. We're spamming that word today. This sounds more like you want me to guess, not who I would pick for it. And so in terms of Canton, it's there's a few guys that I think are likely, but I'm going to say in terms of guys that are only 3 years into their career, I know that I know that I'm missing out on someone really easy right now. And this is going to be one of those really fun times when I'm sitting here Googling something while you guys listen to me, just stall as I slowly talk. And I look at a few of the guys that have only been here a few years. I think if I'm going to go with Canton in terms of guys that are 3 years or less, I think the most likely guy, one might think that I would pick Creed Humphrey for that. It's incredibly hard to make the Hall of Fame as a center. It's borderline impossible, quite frankly. It's almost impossible to make it as a guard as well. And so if I was going to just pick a guy, and again, these are the 3 years or less guys, I think I would go. I think I would go Nick Bolton. I don't feel terrific about that because linebacker is incredibly tough too. But in terms of the guys that have been here 3 years, it's just tough to find a guy with that they've had good drafts, but they haven't had necessarily dominating players in those positions. Coach, I'm going to go with, oh man, I used up Nick Bolton for that one. Well, that's a bummer, but what are you going to do? I think actually, Coach, I think Leo Chanel is going to be a position coach someday at the very least. Can't you just see it? At the very least, a strength and conditioning coach. And color commentary, that's where I'm going to use my large adult son, Creed Humphrey. Let's see. The Last Cheese Ball. Excellent name. If D Ford was on sides in 2018, how many Super Bowls would the Chiefs have? How much different would the defense look? The ripple effect for one penalty seems massive. I personally think Bob Sutton was gone regardless of the outcome of that season. I think he would have just retired a little more officially, and people wouldn't have viewed it as a firing. But if D Ford's was not offsides, I think they win the Super Bowl that year. I think they beat that Rams team. And so I think they have 2 Super Bowls, and I think they win back-to-back. But I think they still do the defensive turnaround. I think they still grab Spagnuolo. I think Andy Reid probably wanted him all along, would be my guess. Let's see. Assuming Willie Gay, Jake Opie, 12124. Assuming Willie Gay Jr. and Jody Fortson fulfill their potential this year, what can we expect to pay them to keep them on the team going forward? Willie has another year left on his rookie deal, but still, with total respect, there's no but still there. He's got another year left on his rookie deal, so it's a complete unknown at this point. And at this point, he shouldn't be a terribly expensive rookie or second contract. Even if he plays to his potential this year, it's still going to be one of those big but not huge type deals. He's going to have to do it 2 years in a row to get one of those massive deals, generally speaking. It's not all the time, but it usually works that way. With Fortson, I believe they have the ability to keep him around for cheap for another year, regardless of what happens here. I'm trying to think. 1, 2, 3. Maybe he was a restricted free agent, if I'm recalling correctly now. But even if he plays to his potential, the thing with Fortson is his role is going to be somewhat muted this year. Red zone stuff, all that kind of thing. And tight end contracts are almost by necessity a little more downplayed than other receivers' contracts, wide receiver contracts. There's this big iniquity there. It's one reason why I wouldn't mind the Chiefs kind of, really going after a second tight end if they're not going to utilize Fortson in that position, trying to grab more guys there because it's more cost effective. Cornbread 21, man, we're not even to the Twitter questions yet. Let's say Big Red hangs it up in 2 years. Bill Belichick is available and Sean Payton. Who are you going to take as the future coaches or an alternative? I mean, if Belichick was available as a head coach, I mean, you take him. He's the GOAT. Sean Payton is an incredible coach. You'd take either one of them. I'm guessing, for one, I don't think Big Red hangs it up in 2 years. I think he's probably got at least 4 or 5 years left, health permitting. And I think they probably have an in-house replacement for him would be my guess in how that goes. Steve Harold asks, what Chiefs website do you like to check info for some of your information? This is not in any way. There's a lot of great sites out there. I obviously came up writing for Arrowhead Pride. My good friend Josh Briscoe does Arrowhead Report. My good friend Matty V, he helps run Arrowhead Addict. Well, actually, I think Patrick Allen runs Arrowhead Addict. Either way, and Patrick Allen's awesome. There's a bunch of people that I love that work on a bunch of really good websites. Matt Derrick does a great job where he's at. There's tons of great sites. Me personally, I don't read a lot of them. And that's why I was like trying to do this caveat there over and over. It's just more of a time thing. And the reality is the things that I need to check. I watch the film for myself. I get updates via Twitter and any statistical stuff I find on Pro Football Reference. Maybe some stuff on PFF, generally speaking, Football Outsiders, that kind of stuff. And so I just don't read a lot of Chiefs sites. I do think that a lot of them out there, there's a ton of great people providing great content. The Kansas City Sports Network guys do a great job. There's just a lot of different places that provide a lot of great content. I just have to consume most of it, honestly, because I'm busy trying to produce it. But any one of them that I just named, you'd be very happy with, to try to follow the Chiefs with. Gary Smith asks, is the defense going to be good? I am going to swing back to that, Gary, because I had someone else ask me that question in a similar way. Steven Stark asks, the way everyone was hyping Kennard, it sounded like he would start at right tackle. Where does he fit in with the O-line? Well, he would fit in theory, at right tackle. He just didn't win the job. He wasn't as pro-ready as some, including myself, thought he might be based on his tape at Kentucky. He was one of those situations, I think, based on what I'm told, although it's worth noting that his third preseason game, he played better than his first couple. I think for him, when guys enter the NFL, physical traits matter a lot, obviously. And some of the things that are slight weaknesses in college become much bigger weaknesses in the pros because everyone's faster, everyone's stronger, all those things. The comparison I always make with that is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. His lack of explosive acceleration is something that he was still an unbelievable college player because he's got really good quickness. He's got good vision. And someone's going to say something in the comments about that. No, he doesn't. Yes, he does. I've written about this ad nauseum. I've reviewed hundreds of his snaps utilizing the Madden Cam. Generally speaking, the snaps people point to that say Edwards-Helaire doesn't have good vision, you can see the reason why he's coached to make certain moves. His lack of explosion hurts him, certainly. Generally speaking, he's got good vision. Anyway, those things are what helped him succeed when he's running between the tackles in college, because that lack of explosion didn't quite hurt him as much because of that quickness and the vision. At the pro level, you could see it kind of as everyone else took a step up in speed and he stayed here. That was problematic for him and continues to be. We'll see how he does this year. Hopefully running between the tackles more helps him out. But to talk about Kennard again, I think that issue with him was lateral agility, and it's hurt him more in the pros than it would have in college. All right, we got to get to 1 million of these, and if I make this longer than about 25 minutes, Ryan's going to kill me. James McDonald asks, so I might skip a few of the ones on Twitter. I'm just going to do the best I can, guys. You guys are so responsive. Can Leo Chanel be safely utilized to be the mobile quarterback heat-seeking missile? Used to spot foes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray. So the spy role. My answer to that would be generally no. The reason for that is while he would be able to do it for some quarterbacks, not all. He's really fast downhill. He closes on the line really well. One problem that you run into as a spy is that eventually you might be alone near the sideline or in space against the quarterback one-on-one, and Chanel's change of direction isn't incredible. And so he might get exposed in space in those situations. However, he's a smart enough player to where he would be able to at least keep them from scrambling. And part of the point of the spy isn't necessarily to really even close and make the tackle. It's so as the quarterback scrambles, you mirror where they're going and you force them to not scramble and turn back towards the defense or turn just going straight ahead rather than trying to find the edge. So he could do that. I think Willie Gay Jr. with some of these really mobile quarterbacks is a better choice for that sort of thing because he is quicker and he is faster. Dirk Strongtell says the conventional wisdom holds that having a great linebacker core doesn't make a huge difference in the modern NFL. Is this group an exception to the rule? Why or why not? I would say that's the conventional wisdom, but I would say that wisdom is a little bit flawed when you have a great linebacker core, depending on what they can do specifically. If they're excellent in coverage, if they're able to fulfill a variety of roles in coverage, especially, that allows you to make certain calls and give certain responsibilities to your linebackers that open things up for your safeties, especially for your safeties. And it also allows you to defend the middle of the field a lot better, which is an area that teams are just attacking like crazy in the modern NFL. So I would say this linebacker group, which has something to prove still. One thing that spooks me is that we're kind of going in expecting them to be great. I have high hopes for Bolton. He's played really well so far. I have hopes for Willie Gay Jr., but we'll see how it goes. I would say it depends on Gay's role in it, because he's the one that I think has the ceiling of being exceptional in coverage and being able to fulfill all the different coverage roles that some of the really great coverage backers have done. And that would allow the defense to be more varied in its calls. I do think it does still move the needle less than other position groups, but it certainly matters in terms of having those as a strength. And so it doesn't, it's not like having, an incredible pass rush. It's not going to be like having multiple great corners, but it definitely matters in terms of helping a little bit against the pass and a lot against the run. It flips a little bit in terms of helping a little bit against the run and a lot against the pass, but it still moves the needle a great deal, putting defenses in bad situations, forcing some checkdowns they wouldn't want to otherwise make, forcing offenses to deal with 2nd and 8 instead of 2nd and 6. And that matters a great deal in play calling. Graham Oldfather asks, who is your favorite player in the roster besides the obvious 3, which is Mahomes, Jones, and future Hall of Famer Fortson? You missed my large adult son, Creed Humphrey. He's finally helped me forget about Mitch Morse, my former. I would just call him my now fully grown large adult son who has moved off into the world. He's gotten himself a good job, grabbed himself the bag, and now Creed is my new large adult son. Just such a great player. So technically good, so technically refined for a rookie last year. Was really, in a lot of ways, as a rookie, a better pro than he even was a college player. And he was a great college player. Also, in your opinion, which player will have the most surprising performance this season? I think the most surprising performance for a lot of people, and I'm going to circle back to this, not for Chiefs fans because we tend to hype up rookies, but I think for a lot of people, I think it's going to be Trent McDuffie. I loved his film in preseason. Absolutely loved it. John S. in Idaho, the Chiefs have let a few players go to free agency and not even brought them back to the practice squad. Who is someone that you wish they had kept and why? This is going to sound like a cop-out answer. There really isn't anyone that they let walk that really bummed me out. And that sounds bad, and I hope all those guys find jobs. But really, they kept the roster very intact for what I would like to see it, including the practice squad. So that's actually been one really, really good thing so far about this year. Jiffy asks, which Chiefs player do you expect will surprise fans with the performance in week 1? And what do you expect those performances look like? Okay, I see what you're asking here. I think the surprise performance in week 1, just because we've seen Andy Reid game plan it this way before, is probably going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think we're going to be surprised how much he gets the ball, and I think we're going to be surprised how effective he is utilized in certain ways. I think that we've seen Andy Reid do that early in the season with Clyde before. I think we see it again this time. If Pacheco doesn't completely overtake him, and I just don't think that's really where it's at right now. Marcel says, how will the Vikings win the NFC North? I'm trying to cheer up a friend, and you're the best geographical position to make the case. The Bears stink. The Lions are the Lions, and Aaron Rodgers has defied the odds a couple years in a row in terms of being so unbelievably great and doesn't have Devontae Adams anymore. That's the Vikings path because I think they've got the most complete overall roster. Maybe. Although, man, that Packers defense is great too. So no Devontae Adams. That's the best I can do for you. And the Vikings do have a good roster. Chiefs Out West says Vance Joseph sent blitz pressures at one of the highest clips in the league last year. Given there's no Chandler Jones and the status of Marcus Golden and J.J. Watt in question, man, the Cardinals are kind of struggling with some injuries in some important areas there. What are the over-under for Arizona's blitz percentage for week 1? I mean, Maybe what they're hoping is because the Chiefs are going to spend all their time preparing for these cover two shells and a lack of blitzes, that they'll take them by surprise by blitzing a ton. I think that would be insane. I would put the over under at 10% and probably take the under. Teams don't blitz Patrick Mahomes, and there's a reason for that. And you even saw it in preseason. And it's not like they were game planning for blitzes in the preseason, and it's not like they were expecting blitzes in the preseason because it's the preseason, and they still, against Washington, completely annihilated them. Blitzing Patrick Mahomes, there's going to be some defensive coordinator that figures out some secret sauce to it here eventually and has a really great game against him doing it. But we just haven't seen it in like 2 years. That's just not something that teams should do or do against Patrick Mahomes. It's a terrible idea just because he's just so great at beating them. Russ C. Giles, Chiefs ride for life. We taking it back. I love that. Asks, why is everyone counting the Chiefs out of the Super Bowl or AFC playoffs? We're better than half the teams. They're expecting so much disrespect to Mahomes and the Chiefs. I think it depends on who you're following. The Vegas odds are still really high for them. There's a lot of people that are picking the Chiefs to make the playoffs, to win the division, to make or even win the Super Bowl. It's just more than normal are picking anyone else. And I would just remind you that when you're talking one team versus the field, you're almost always going to get the field. And the Bills had a really good team last year. They added Von Miller, who could really play last year. That one stings, and he was a great addition for what they need to overcome the hump with the Chiefs. So I would say I don't really take it as disrespect. I just think, it becomes boring to hit the same button over and over. And a lot of other teams took some big steps forward. Everyone talking about the Chargers right now. We'll see how it goes for them. But they did add a lot of good pieces to a defense that needed the help. And Justin Herbert's a stud. So I don't really take it as disrespect. I just think the AFC is getting better and better. Uncle Glenny, hey Glenn, you making out to Big Charlie's for a game or what? I've never been to Philadelphia, but if I ever plan a trip to Philadelphia, that will be definitely part of it. And I will sit there and drink water while the rest of you get hammered and watch a Chiefs game. Not that I would condone doing that, but I assume that's what you would do while I drink my water. That's me. Designated driver for everyone since 2006 or so. JHWK, which Veach draft pick is the first to make the Pro Bowl as a non-specialist? I think McDuffie will be the best player, but I think Karlaftis has a better chance to make the Pro Bowl because sacks are noticed a little more. Although it's hard to make the Pro Bowl as a defensive end in the AFC, but I could see Karlaftis or McDuffie doing it. But which Veach draft pick in general? Ooh, well I think Humphrey already did, if I'm recalling correctly. Hold on. See, now I need to look this up because this is going to bother me. And I'm using Pro Football Reference. Creed Humphrey, I forgot he didn't make the Pro Bowl last year. That is a travesty, a sham, and a mockery. It is a Travis mockery, to quote a commercial from years and years ago. I would say the most likely person would be Creed, given all the hype that he's now getting, or Nick Bolton, or Trey Smith. Any of those guys, I think, is very likely to make it happen. I could see L'Jarius Sneed getting there as well. AJ Nightingale asks, if you could pick one rookie to have a Pro Bowl level year in our Super Bowl run, who would you choose and why? Man, it's so tough to choose because I'm going to keep spamming these two names. Apparently I'm going to spam the term spamming too. McDuffie or Karlaftis, either one of them having a Pro Bowl level year would be a huge, huge, huge boon. And I think the one that would probably be the biggest deal would be Karlaftis. Casey Grossneglass, how about achieving their t-shirt giveaway? What do we have to do to win one? I'll think about that. I'll talk to Ryan. James asks, is anyone else still worried about our defensive backs? Absolutely. Bunch of young guys. You're relying on probably Brian Cook as the third safety, although Deion Bush put up a fight for that spot. And so if Cook won it out, I assume that's a merit thing, especially with how Spags is with young guys and not just being handed the position. So that makes me worry a little less about the safety position, but they are definitely relying on young guys at corner, and that is tough. I mean, probably going to have a rookie at third safety, probably going to have a rookie at the second cornerback spot. Both of those things are scary. Paul Io, sorry. Who would be the player that the Chiefs would miss the most if injured other than Mahomes? It's got to be Travis Kelce or Chris Jones. I think probably Chris Jones, because with Travis Kelce, you still have Mahomes and you still have a bunch of receiving options. And I think Andy Reid can make that work. Although Kelsey's so important to the offense, you would miss him most situationally. Well, no, you just miss him. He's awesome. But Chris Jones, he basically has been the pass rush. And a lot of people, well, the pass rush hasn't been good. That's true. But situationally, there's been moments where it has been good. And basically all of those are Chris Jones related. And you'd miss out on that. They become abysmally bad. Abysmal. Lee Campbell asked what Chiefs receiver will have the most yards this year, who will have the most touchdowns. I think Juju Smith-Schuster will have the most yards, and I think the most touchdowns might be Mecole Hardman, honestly, just because of some of the ways that he gets used. But I think Juju Smith-Schuster, if he stays healthy, actually has a good shot at both of those things. We only have time for a few more. Goodness gracious, you guys are so great at all these things. Kenny asked, Deshaun Jackson is the only wide receiver to accumulate 1,000+ yards from scrimmage as a rookie for Andy Reid. Will Sky Moore be the second, or will he not get enough usage? I don't think he will be. Goodness gracious. I'm going to actually sneeze at least one or two more times because that's how I do it. I think that Moore probably won't get the usage barring some injuries. So that, again, that comes back to Juju Smith-Schuster. If Smith-Schuster struggles with injuries, I could see Moore going for 1,000 because he might become one of the primary guys. Other than that, I don't think he'll be the second. I just don't think that's the way Andy Reid does things. And I think it takes too long to learn the role in the offense. Barring, again, him really jumping out and becoming the player I think he can be really early and giving them no choice. Hangamelon says, please explain to me why I shouldn't be more excited for this retooled defense rather than the offense. I think it's very overlooked, possibly an underrated side of this team. So one reason to not be quite as excited is there's a lot of rookie parts here, like we said, and this is kind of how I'm moving it all back to the defense. I'm excited about these rookies, particularly McDuffie and Karlaftis. I think Jalen Watson played great in preseason. I think Josh Williams shows a lot of potential. I like what Leo Chanel does as a run defender at the Sam linebacker spot. I think Brian Cook looked really fast and really physical in preseason. Lots of reasons to like all these guys, but they're rookies. And with rookies, you're generally at best going to get a bunch of ups and downs. And sometimes it's just all downs. And so that they're really counting on at least 2 rookies to be above average players and then another guy to be an average player. That would be an unbelievable draft haul. Is it possible? Sure. But it's not likely. So that's one reason to be not quite as excited about the defense. A reason to be excited, check out what those rookies did in preseason film. They looked excellent and ready to contribute. So what do I know? The J-Rose asks, who affects the game more, defensive line, offensive line, secondary, or running backs? Not running backs. I would say probably in total, who affects the game more in terms of consistency? I would say probably the secondary in the modern NFL, just because if guys are getting open constantly, pass rush becomes almost irrelevant and teams just start picking on guys over and over again. Mike MG asks, and we're going to get to just a couple more. What is the single greatest thing about football season? What is the single greatest thing about football? Football season, it's fun. It's just so much fun looking and seeing plans try to come into fruition. The fans getting to cheer for things together, the camaraderie of it, the kind of the family atmosphere of being fanatics together. I think that's the greatest thing about football season. The single greatest thing about football is the fact, in my opinion, that it's a beautiful sport, that it's a bunch of massive dudes just hammering one another, but it's way more than that when you look beneath the surface. And one of my favorite things, the more I learn about it, and I've said this before, the more I learn about football, the more I love it, because everything is so interconnected and complicated. And you can't pull a lever over here without it affecting something over here. And everything is it all matters in the big picture on every single play. All 11 guys, there really is something going on with each one. And the more you break down each individual player, the prettier it becomes as a game. I love that. Just time for 2 more. Abono asked, who becomes a deep threat, McCole or MVS? MVS, he's more consistent with the ball in the air, and I think he's going to get more shots. Hardman, I think, will help, but that just hasn't been his specialty, barring a big leap forward this year. Marley says, what does CEH have that McKinnon doesn't, that Pacheco doesn't? In theory, He is a little quicker with change of direction. Well, quite a bit quicker with change of direction between the tackles than both of those guys in terms of jump cuts, that sort of thing. And he at times has done a better job setting up blocks than especially Pacheco. McKinnon's pretty good at that too. But other than that, it's a little up in the air. He hasn't really shown much more than that. And he hasn't shown those things to such a special extent that it's going to really guarantee him the job if Pacheco or McKinnon show out. I think McKinnon is probably limited in his role because they want him healthy for a playoff run. I'm going to take one more and then we're going to be done. If the Chiefs defensive line struggles to apply pressure by the deadline, do you see the Chiefs pulling off a trade, and who do you think they can target? I do think if the Chiefs defensive line struggles to apply pressure, I think they will probably revisit the Robert Quinn thing at the deadline, see if they can get him for a little more cheap. That is all I have time for today, and I've gone way longer than I really should have anyway. It's week 1. Football's here. Thank you guys for your questions. I'm sorry that there's a couple I didn't get to. I hate it when I don't get to all of them, but make sure to, again, like, subscribe, and do all the YouTube things that you're supposed to do. I don't understand YouTube, but I think you're supposed to do those things. Ryan would really appreciate it. And then also, make sure to check Twitter to reply, to get your questions in, or put them in the comment section below. Put a bunch of question marks beforehand if you can, or put mailbag in all caps. I really appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys interacting, all the wonderful mailbag questions. It is week 1. It is a great week to be a Chiefs fan. I will see you guys Monday.